Can everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to George W. Norris Legislative Chamber for the 62nd day of the 106th Legislature First Session. Our chaplain for today is Pastor Eddie Goff of the New Hope Baptist Church in Hastings, Nebraska, Senator Halloran's district. Please rise.
Let's pray. Father, this morning as we come before you, we just want to thank you, Father, for who you are and for what you've already done for us. Father, we ask for today to be the day as we look to you, Father. We remember those around Nebraska that are still hurting from the floods and, Father, recovering. We just ask your hand to be upon them today. Father, we ask you today to watch over our men and women that are still serving and fighting for this country. Father, we ask you to watch over and protect our men and women that are, Father, in the service of law enforcement today. And, Lord, for the men and women that are in this chamber, we just ask you today, God, to give them the wisdom, the strength that they need, that Father, as they do the job that they've been elected to do, we just ask you, God. Father, most of all, we just thank you for who you are. Thank you for what you've done for us. And Lord, we just ask you now as we go through this day that we remember who you are and what you have done. And Father, as we celebrate this weekend, the resurrection, we just thank you so much for that. Father, we ask this now in the blessed name of our Savior, Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Goff. I call to order the 62nd day of the 106th Legislature First Session. Senators, please record your presence. Roll call. Mr. Clerk, please record.
There's a quorum present, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Are there any corrections for the journal?
No corrections this morning.
Thank you, sir. Are there any message reports or announcements?
I do, Mr. President. Communication from the governor. Congress Legislative Bills 34, 217, 243, 269, 270, 348, 409, 449, 590, and 619 have been received in the governor's office on April 11th and were delivered to the Secretary of State on April 17th. Have a report on registered lobbyists for the current week, an acknowledgement of the filing of various agency reports that are available to the members on the legislature's website. I have a opinion from the Attorney General's office regarding LB 644 addressed to Senator McDonald. That will be inserted in the journal. New resolution LR 86 congratulates Nancy Hicks upon her retirement. That will be laid over. That's all I have at this time, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Members, Senator Clements would like us to recognize Dr. Dale Agner of Papillion, Nebraska, who is serving as today's Family Physician of the Day. Dr. Agner is accompanied by Dr. Sean Kark of Omaha and Dr. Tim Reed of Omaha. With those three doctors, please rise. I'd like to welcome you to the Nebraska Legislature. Members will now proceed to the first item on the agenda, legislative confirmation reports. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, the first report from the Judiciary Committee is the appointment of Robert Twist to the Board of Parole.
Senator Lathrop, welcome to open on the Judiciary Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, good morning. Our first report today is on Robert Twist. He is a new appointment to the Nebraska Board of Parole. He was appointed to serve a term from November 30, 2018 until September 9, 2024. Mr. Twist is a businessman from Gretna. He appeared in person before the Judiciary Committee at a February 22 hearing. The Judiciary Committee voted 8-0 to advance his confirmation and recommend confirmation by the full legislature. And with that, I would encourage your support of this nominee for the parole board. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lathrop. Debate is now open on the confirmation report from the Judiciary Committee. Senator Chambers, you recognize.
Mr. President, members of the legislature, I always give a homily, so I'm going to get what I have to say this morning out of the way on the confirmation. Then when you get to final reading and the other meat of the session for today, I won't have to comment in the way that I intend to today. But I'd like to ask Senator Coulterman a question if he's here.
Senator Coulterman, yield, please.
Certainly. Senator Coulterman, you and I banter back and forth, and you will ask me questions and I'll ask you questions, sometimes on a bill, sometimes not. Is that true?
Absolutely correct.
Now, are you here every morning when they say the Pledge of Allegiance?
No, I'm not here every morning.
But are you here some mornings?
Occasionally I get here early enough to participate.
Have you heard the words, "with liberty and justice for all" in the pledge? Do you believe that to be true right this minute here today, that in this country there is liberty and justice for all people?
I believe we need to attempt that. I don't necessarily think it's happening, but I've listened to you a lot. I understand your plight, and I concur that you're absolutely correct in many cases.
Thank you. Members of the legislature, I know there are people, and I'll even give them a crumb, if you want to call it that, people of goodwill who see that pledge as being aspirational, a hope. But the fact is, it is offered as an assertion. They say that is the situation right now, and that's not true. I can easily bring you many examples pertaining to black people, but the further from you a person is, the less empathy you can have. So I'm talking this morning about the trans soldiers, not black people, not trans people in general, but trans soldiers. And when I use the term soldier, that embraces every member of every branch of the military. There are several branches, as most of you all know. But what was done by Mr. Trump applies to all branches of the service. And what bothered me this morning and set me off was what I heard about the Naval Academy. Starting next year, they will not accept any trans persons for the Naval Academy. I hear a lot said on this floor about veterans, what it means to serve in the military, how people are thanked for having been in the military. I'm sure that thanks doesn't apply to me, but it doesn't have to, because I was not a hero. I just got over an obligation that I had without getting an Article 15 or court-martial or a bad conduct discharge. I avoided those obstacles. But as Senator Coltman acknowledged, there is not liberty and justice for all. And it bothers me what happens to the trans soldiers, because they are now stigmatized. They are stigmatized by their own government, by the country that they swore an oath to defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and they did not know that their greatest enemy was the commander-in-chief of that country.
1 minute.
To which they pledged more than allegiance. And I cannot, in good conscience, allow those kinds of things to happen without saying something. The words that I speak, I know, have no more existence, no more substance than the air somebody breathes in, then exhales. When they exhale, that's the end of that breath. It will never come back again. My words will have no impact, no effect. But I have things that I must do and I must say because of what my conscience demands of me. And these things that I'm saying are matters of conscience. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Chambers. Senator LeGrone.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of the nomination of Bob Twist to the parole board. Bob is a constituent of mine. He's been a mainstay in the Gretna community for many years, and I just wanted to rise and wholeheartedly support his confirmation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator LeGrone. Senator Clements.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also rise in support of Bob Twist for the parole board. He's from Gretna. I've known him a number of years. When I spoke with him, he said that public safety is his #1 priority on the parole board, and I believe him to be, he'd been very involved in judicial interest in the last number of years, and he's very excited about being a member of the parole board. And as a legislator, I'm pleased to recommend him. I ask for your green vote for Bob Twist. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Clements. Senator Chambers.
Thank you. Mr. President, members of the legislature, I would like to ask Senator Clements a question while he's standing,
Senator
if he will
Clements, yield,
yield.
Yes.
Senator Clements, is this day, which is the Friday preceding Easter, known as Good Friday?
Yes.
Why is it called Good Friday, if you know?
Well, because it was the day that Jesus was put on the cross.
And that was a good thing in the minds of Christians, for him to be executed, an innocent man, and that makes this a good day?
Well, the end result was good on Easter.
Then why do they say that the day he was inappropriately executed or murdered by the state, why do they call that a good day and celebrate it? And I don't want to be argumentative. I'm asking you for your opinion.
Well, I believe it's because it was good of him to love us enough to sacrifice his life.
Would his life really be of more consequence than the one day when he was executed, in your opinion?
Well, I don't have an opinion on that one.
Okay. Just one other thing. Since I'm not religious, and I think if you go by the way people live, there are a lot of religious people here, but not righteous people. Could it become a day that everybody can celebrate and call it Good Friday because we get this Friday off work? Would that make it a Good Friday for the rest of us? Then we can all celebrate, even though we have different reasons for it. Is that a good compromise?
If you'd like to celebrate for that reason, that's fine with me.
Thank you. See how I can pour oil on troubled waters? We're all of one accord in the same place we celebrate Good Friday. But I read in the paper, and I'm going to put on my light, the following article. It says, Pope's Good Friday meditation will focus on human trafficking. This was in the World Herald, April 13th. Vatican City, Associated Press. Pope Francis is dedicating this year's Good Friday meditations to victims of human trafficking. The Vatican said Francis had asked an Italian nun who rescues migrant women forced to work as prostitutes to compose the meditations. They will be read aloud at the torchlit ritual reenacting Christ's crucifixion at Rome's Colosseum on April 19th, the Friday before Easter, which would be tomorrow. I'm sorry, I don't even have the day of the week right. Sister Eugenia Bonetti, Bonetti, is a well-known campaigner in the field of human trafficking. Francis has frequently denounced migrant smugglers as, quote, merchants of human flesh, unquote, who exploit the most desperate in society for their own gain. Then here's a paragraph. Earlier, the Vatican announced details of another Holy Week ritual, saying Francis would travel to a prison outside Rome to celebrate the Holy Thursday washing of the feet with 12 inmates. The victims of trafficking are looked after, and the ones who are prisoners, and some of them may have been in prison for drugs. But Pope Francis is not asking about that. He's not saying when you get out, go to work. He is putting them on a position, on a platform in a manner of speaking, so they can feel they remain not only members of the human race, but those who are singled out by him to show that they have worth.
Excuse me, Senator Chambers.
Yes.
Members, could you please hold the conversations down?
Thank you, Mr. President, but I don't mind. They're getting along very well, which may not be the case all day, and maybe we should enjoy these moments when we have them. Is my time up on this one just about?
About 40 seconds.
Thank you. Then I will stop and finish when I'm recognized. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Chambers. Senator Coltman.
Good morning, colleagues. Senator Chambers, would you yield to a question,
Senator
please?
Chambers, yield, please.
Happily, my brother.
Several times this morning already, you've indicated that this is Good Friday. I just want to correct the record. This happens to be Thursday.
Yes.
So it's good to talk about Good Friday, but you should do it on Good Friday. This is Thursday.
Just one other thing, if we can engage.
Sure.
Is there a rule somewhere where Good Friday can only be discussed on Good Friday? Or is this something that you are putting in place today?
Well, I thought if you'd spend the day tomorrow talking about Good Friday, that would be terrific.
Would we be here on Good Friday?
No, but it'd be fun if you came and spent the day talking about it.
Are we promised life tomorrow?
Yes, we are.
So you know for sure that you're going to be alive tomorrow?
And if you come, I'll come.
No, that's not what I'm asking. And it's Senator Coltman's time, so that's all I will say at this point. Thank you.
And I yield the rest of my time to Senator Chambers.
3 minutes 45 has been yielded, Senator Chambers.
Thank you. Mr. President, members of the legislature, Senator Coltman and I display on occasion what it means to be our brother's keeper. We don't see eye to eye on everything, mostly because I'm a bit taller than he is, so literally we don't. But when it comes to other matters, we have differences, but they're genuine differences, and we both recognize that. So after we get past that rough patch, and we don't fall out with each other because of those differences, wherever we can cooperate and work together, we'll do that. And the Bible, since we're on that subject, says, Oh, how wonderful it is when brethren dwell together in peace. I would add, and harmony. In a sense, I'm acting on that principle for myself by getting what I have to say out of the way before we start final reading and the other considerations. How much time do I have on Senator Coldman's time, Mr. President?
2.5 minutes.
Thank you. I have a short article that I'm going to read because it deals with another group who are scorned, stigmatized, dismissed from the human race. This was in the Lincoln Journal-Star, Tuesday. Church defies rule on gay marriages. A Methodist church in Omaha has decided to defy its larger denomination by condoning same-sex marriages. Leaders of First United Methodist Church recently decided to allow same-sex marriages, weddings at the church, and allow its pastor to officiate at those ceremonies. The local church's decision contrasts with a vote of the United Methodist Church's General Conference. In February, the overall United Methodist denomination narrowly supported a ban on gay clergy and on same-sex weddings performed at its churches. I want to tell you all that I do perform weddings, and I've officiated at about 14 of them, several of them out in the rotunda. And I officiated at the first and probably the only gay or same-sex marriage in this Capitol building. And I was able to point to this chamber, which was empty at that time, to call attention to the fact that the majority of people who come there daily would be against what was being done during that wedding. I also was invited to Congress to a committee hearing to speak against that so-called Defense of Marriage Act, which would make it unnecessary for a state which did not like same-sex marriage to honor or recognize a same-sex marriage which was illegal in another state. They didn't have to give full faith and credit. Not only was I pleased to speak against that law, but I was more pleased when the U.S. Supreme Court took the same position that I took. And I respect this minister who's willing to take this stand, knowing how it might lead to his being ostracized, condemned, and criticized. But if you genuinely believe something, you are compelled by something inside of yourself to do that. Your inner peace means more to you than all of the criticism that is on the outside. Thank you, Mr. President.
But you may continue on your own time now, and this is your third opportunity.
Thank you. I have a lot of respect for Pope Francis, and I did from the first day he was elevated to that position. He is not a European. He came from a part of the world where he has seen and has witnessed a lot of mistreatment of people. So I addressed a letter to him, but in the same way that I was speaking of today, which is Thursday, as though it were Good Friday, this was put together too late to get to him, so I did not send it, but I might do it. Dear Pope Francis, and you all know I have a penchant for rhyming. First of all, I wish you Godspeed. Secondly, there is nothing you need by way of suggestion or recommendation when you address those of every nation. Nevertheless, Brother Francis, if you please, should you name traffickers, may I suggest these? Not merely traffickers, they claim to own their sex slaves, blood, flesh, and bone. This claque, C-L-A-Q-U-E, I offer is just a sample, hence is presented by way of example. This country is shot through and through with sex trafficking, rapes, and probably some murders of these black women who were owned by the fathers, as you call them, of this country. And this is the catalog that I was recommending and suggesting, because it would show how men who did these horrendous things are honored, even elected as president. For the people who think that I might know everything. I'm going to read the names so I won't get any of them wrong. George Washington, President. Thomas Jefferson, President. Andrew Jackson, President. Patrick Henry, #1 patriot. And I don't know if I got one of those. No, I didn't have one, but I don't want to leave out Alex. His face appears on a piece of the money, just like George Washington's and Andrew Jackson, Alexander Hamilton. All of these were slave holders. They were sex traffickers. Sex traffickers. And you all today act like you're concerned about human trafficking and sex traffickers, to be more precise. But what about the sex traffickers in your history? I tried to get this body to take George Washington's birthday out of that so-called American piece of trash and propaganda. I gave it to Senator Slama. She rejected it. My view was that you should say President's Day. Then you don't put into the statute official sanctification and honoring and condonation of human trafficking and rape of black women, which is what George Washington engaged in. And he and his wife had some disagreements about that, as did Thomas Jefferson and his wife. And you know what the rumor is? When Jefferson was doing this, it was known during that day. He didn't hide it. He said, Miss Jefferson said, Thomas, you leave those black women alone. He said, Miss Jefferson, I'll leave you alone first. And she often was left alone. And she had to tell him, stay out of those slave huts. And this British guy who came here that you all almost worship.
1 minute.
Went to some of the plantations of these big important people and said he saw little children of different complexions running around, and they all had the same resemblance as though from the same father. And the only difference was as if you took a loaf of bread, all white slices, and you toasted some and left the others white. If you put them together, you see they both came from the same loaf. That's what I have to live with. That happened. And I see you all honoring these people still. So that's what compels me to say the things that I say, to do the things that I do. But I look beyond what is happening just to black people. But because of what happened to us, and I know how it makes me feel inside, I look at those other groups that have been rejected and scorned because of what they are. And I do what I can to help them, even though they don't speak in support of the things that pertain to black people. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Chambers. Is there any further discussion in the confirmation report from the Judiciary Committee? I see none. Senator Lathrop, he waives closed and requests for the body is the adoption of the confirmation report from the Judiciary Committee. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care too? Record, please.
40 yeas, no nays on the adoption of the report, Mr. President.
Confirmation report is adopted. Second report, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, the second report from the Judiciary Committee is an appointment to the Nebraska Crime Commission.
Senator Lathrop, as chair of the committee, recognized to open on the Judiciary Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. President and colleagues. Good morning once again. Don Arp Jr. is a new appointment to be Executive Director of the Nebraska Crime Commission. His appointment term began February 18, 2019 and continues to serve at the pleasure of the governor. Mr. Arp is from Lincoln. He appeared in person before the Judiciary Committee at a March 27 hearing. The Judiciary Committee advanced his confirmation, voting 6-0 with 2 present and not voting, to recommend his confirmation by the full legislature. And with that, those votes included myself. I would encourage your support of Mr. Arp. and his appointment to the Nebraska Crime Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lathrop. Is there any discussion of the Judiciary Committee confirmation report? Senator Pansy Brooks.
On me? Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. I just am standing to let you know why I was not voting in this situation, and I will be not voting again. The law 81-1424 states that the governor shall appoint and set the salary of the executive director consistent with any compensation and pay plan established by the Personnel Division of Department of Administrative Services. The executive director shall be qualified by, quote, appropriate, well, this is all a quote, by appropriate training and experience in the field of criminal law and justice. It goes on to say the executive, how they can be removed. So I do have some concerns about whether or not we are following the law as written in this case. And I do think that there was a lot of testimony about what a fine, upstanding person Mr. Arp is. But the law states he has to have appropriate training and experience in the field of criminal law and justice. He talked about the fact that his father was a lawyer and that he'd had some experience in research in criminal justice matters. He's a doctorate, I believe, of philosophy. Do you remember? Oh, master's of philosophy. So the training has not been in criminal justice or in criminal law. So I have concerns about following what the law says in this instance. Do we want to follow the law or do we not? And I'm just voicing my concerns, and I will be not voting in this instance because I am concerned about our mission to follow the laws that have been set by previous legislatures. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you, Senator Pansy Brooks. Senator Erdman.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor, and good morning. I did vote for the last person. I will vote for this person. That's not the main reason that I rise today. Today is a very unique day in our family. It's very special. I have two granddaughters who are celebrating their birthdays on this day, 2 years apart. Tinley is going to be 5, and Faith is going to be 3. So, ladies, I wish you a happy birthday. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Erdman. Senator Lathrop.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to address Senator Pansy Brooks' concern so that you have some perspective on the thinking of at least some members of the Judiciary Committee. First of all, the criteria that has caused some concern with this appointment is appropriate training and experience in the field of criminal law and justice. I'm going to start out by observing that that's a pretty vague standard. I don't know what that means. It doesn't require that you have served as a sworn law enforcement officer. Most of the people who have taken this position in the past have been sworn law enforcement officers. They're a former state trooper, former cop from somewhere, and they hold this position. This position, is really sort of a coordinator. They sit on top of information, technology kinds of things that we can get information and data from this office. They also award grants. Mr. Arp, while not having been a sworn law enforcement officer in the past, has been involved in a number of things that are related to law enforcement and criminal law and justice. For example, he has done training at the online training with the National Fire Academy, also done training with National Wildlife Coordinating Group, with the Department of Homeland Security, been involved with the Crime Commission since his appointment, where he worked on issues related to the Fire Marshal's Office, trying to improve that, the Parole Board, and the NSP Crime Lab. He's done and been published in a number of law enforcement publications, including Police Law Enforcement Management Magazine, the Nebraska State Trooper, Law and Order, and the Journal of Intellectual Property Law and Practice. For us, it was a little bit of a, what exactly does the statute require in the first place, and does this person meet the threshold? I think he probably does. Traditionally, it's been a sworn law enforcement officer. By the way, his father wasn't a lawyer. I think Senator Pansy Brooks misspoke. He told us that his dad was a former sheriff or a sworn law enforcement officer. Not that that gets him across the finish line, but he does have some background. He has been a student of this. And I'm going to tell you that we did get some letters from law enforcement people that wanted to see a cop in this position, a retired police officer. And we had some people who wrote and said it would be refreshing not to have somebody who has been a law enforcement officer in this position. They might bring a different perspective. And I have to tell you, as a chair of Judiciary Committee, I've been frustrated. I don't blame this on him, but I've been frustrated a little bit about not being able to get modeling information out of that office. I think this gentleman can bring something to that process, help us update the technology, and maybe take a fresher look at some of the grants that office awards that aren't, as some people were concerned, part of the good old boy network. And so I just wanted to respond. I certainly understand Senator Pansy Brooks's concerns. They are legitimate. They reflect a number of letters that we received. But on the whole, I think his qualifications get across that vague standard in the statute. I think he might bring a different perspective to the office. And with that, I would encourage your support. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Lathrop. Senator Slama.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of Don Arp Jr.'s confirmation as director of the Nebraska Crime Commission, and I'd like to echo Senator Lathrop's response to some of the debate we had in Judiciary Committee about the statute that lays out the qualifications for the director of the Nebraska Crime Commission. You're right. Don Arp has no direct law enforcement experience. But that direct law enforcement experience, being a sworn law enforcement officer, is not necessary to fulfill neither the very vague qualification statute nor the duties of the job. Further, Judy Gosh-Kabosh, the executive director of the Nebraska Commission on Indian Affairs, spoke very highly of the strides that ARP has done already in the Nebraska Crime Commission. So no, he's not a traditional candidate for this position. But it's been refreshing to see the positive changes he's made in such a short amount of time. So I'm going to vote in support of his confirmation, and I would encourage my colleagues to do the same. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Slama. Senator Chambers.
Mr. President, members of the legislature, this is such a rare occasion for me, I can't let it go by. The two who spoke before me expressed exactly the way I feel also. And I'm glad that Senator Slama mentioned the head of the Indian Commission, who talked about the respect that is shown, which had not been the case before. And when Senator Lathrop pointed out the nature of the work that is to be done, the background that this man has and that nobody challenged would suit him very, very, or I would say to a great extent, to carry out those duties. And I intend to vote for him also. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Chambers. Is there any further discussion on the confirmation report? I see none. Senator Lathrop, you're welcome to close. He waives close. The question for the body is the adoption of the confirmation report of the Judiciary Committee. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please, Mr. Clerk.
42 ayes, no nays on the adoption of the report.
Confirmation report is adopted. Members, the next item on our agenda is final reading. I ask you all to please be at your desks We will move into final reading in just a moment. All senators, please be at your desks. As the senators move to their desks, Speaker Scheer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, last day of the week, so I would use this time to let you know what we will be adding onto the calendar for next week. In addition to what is on the schedule, the agenda for today, we'll be adding the following bills. LB 468, Senator Walls. LB 418, Senator Kavanaugh. LB 560, Senator Geist. LB 433, Senator Matt Hansen. LB 86, Senator Wayne. LB 470, Senator LaGrone. And LB 44, Senator Chambers. Those will all show up next week, and if we are not done with the final reading and select today, we will follow that up probably on Tuesday when we get back. We haven't quite figured that out. I hope to be able to finish today's agenda at least through the select and final reading portion. Long weekend. Everyone enjoy the holiday, families, and be safe. We'll see you Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before commencing final reading, Mr. Clerk, you're recognized for announcement.
Mr. President, the Government Committee will hold an executive session at the conclusion of final reading in room 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. We'll now proceed with final reading. First bill is LB 59. Mr. Clerk.
Of course, Bill 59, introduced by Kavanaugh, 6 hour, 9 blood 30. Bill for inoculated children, roads, of legislation, recommend 71, 1936, shows as terms of related investigation to require reports of real original section being enacted by Section 1. 71, 1936, the Department of Required Investigation and Additional Violation of the Nebraska Residential Facility Placing the License Director rules and regulations not by the way against the acts or complaints including complaints violation pursuant to 2711. Term 1 within 5 working days of receiving the complaint upon determination of submit by the authority of the department to enforce. Whether the complaint made in good faith or within the time of something that is merit, whether the complaint may be necessary when there's action taken, we let something that come forward to the action to take whether is within the basis of the complaint is sufficient reasonable basis to believe that a violation has occurred and necessary evidence from other sources. The complaint submitted to the department should be a confidential or submitted to criminal system liability of any nature, whether detriment of submitting a complaint for disclosure direction of the department of investigation of the section must be within 60 days after the made of the required of the final remake of the 90 determination and interim reports dated within 60 days of the determination. Section 2, original Section 71, 1936, revised statute of Nebraska is repealed.
All provisions of law relative to procedure have been complied with. The question is, shall LB 59 pass? Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted? Record, please.
Voting aye, Senators Albright, Arts, Blood, Bowles, Bostelman, Brandt, Brewer, Breezy, Kavanaugh, Chambers, Clements, Crawford, DeBoer, Dorn, Friesen, Geis, Gregor, Roney, Halloran, Ben Hanson, Matt Hanson, Hilgers, Hilkeman, Howard, Hughes, Kunt, Kolowski, Colderman, Lagrone, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Linehan, Lowe, McCollister, McDonald, Moorfeld, Moser, Merman, Pansy, Brooks, Quick, Shears, Slama, Stinner, Vargas, Walls, Wayne, Williams, and Wishart. Voting nay, none. Not voting, Senator Erdman. Senator Erdman voting yes. Vote is 49 ayes, no nays, Mr. President, on the adoption of the bill.
LB 59 passes. Our next bill is LB 87. Mr. Clerk.
Engrossed Bill 87, by Wayne 13, a bill for enactment of the Department of Economic Development, Section 7, the Section 8, the page authorizes the district fund the Affordable Housing Trust Act, Joe Feeding Trust and Aside Ability to develop business and the prescribed and regular section be enacted by the PU Section 1, something that the something county available and affordable trust and the deposits of something that got 30% of the recurrence and as something that's fixed made as some new trust fund system, the allocation plan gift first priority of financial viable and lowest income on a period of time. All of items seven determine housing is seven local government support and participation. Repayment and whole part of the financial by the fund. Your first priority is allocated within select project and that is something of the part. Enterprise is something that is a federal something that is something that an obligation to qualified long period of time. Project fund is something that the budget is part of something something that allocated something to avoid to get something that legalized from doesn't because they have performance or something affordable charging gas fund act. Second, two versions 1201 says something because of the case when I could part of the future funds or something like case in direction of the legislation from the sub account for all money transfer from the case reserve fund to the job training case fund on July 1, 2005. Money there's something about every percent from the something less something that's ready to get up. Introduction product law something what do you say something there's something the same with something little job 15197. Department says the fund for something so 25 million application data system that train potential employment measure with liars in Nebraska. Okay, the train potential for something high power is finding 103. So there's something there, you get something less something we do is to work over job creation act. There's something versus something other enterprise over something that was something that's no expenditure transferred into Nebraska case when something that Nebraska application that something that something there's less than 40% of money the qualified new term the business and the rest of the enterprise opportunities are something there's something the part of this government approval. Part of the partners of the federal enterprise of 1997. Section 5, original section 81, 12-149, ratio by statute Nebraska, section 58-708, 81-12-0121, 81-12-2156, revised act Q sub 2018 are repealed.
All provisions of law relative to procedure have been complied with. The question is, shall LB 87 pass? Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
Voting aye, Senators Albright, Arts, Blood, Bowles, Bostman, Brandt, Breezy, Kavanaugh, Chambers, Clements, Crawford, DeBoer, Dorn, Erdman, Friesen, Geist, Traeger, Roney, Halloran, Ben Hansen, Matt Hansen, Hilders, Helkeman, Howard, Hughes, Hunt, Kolowski, Colderman, Legrone, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Linehan, Lowe, McAllister, McDonald, Morfeld, Moser, Merman, Pansy Brooks, Quick, Shear, Slamas, Dinner, Vargas, Walls, Wayne, Williams, and Wishart. Voting nay, none. Senator Brewer voting yes. Vote is 49 ayes, no nays, Mr. President, on the passage of 87.
LB 87 passes. Our next bill is LB 212. Mr. Clerk, the first vote is dispensed with the at-large reading. Those in favor of dispensing of the reading vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Record, please.
34 ayes, 9 nays to dispense with the at-large reading, Mr. President.
The at-large reading is dispensed with. Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Engross Law Bill 212, introduced by the Government Military and Veterans Affairs Committee, signed by its members. A bill for an act relating to government, Section 23906, 77, 160102, reissue by statute of Nebraska, Section 13519, 13520, 841411, revised act Q sub 2018, change provision limiting budget limitations and procedures, hearing notices for county budgets under the County Budget Act of 1937, hearings, notice of property tax request, requirements for holding meetings by video conference, telephone conference under the Open Meetings Act, and to repeal the original sections.
All provisions of law relative to procedure have been complied with. The question is, shall LB 212 pass? Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Record, please.
Voting aye, Senators Albright, Arts, Blood Bowles, Bosselman, Brandt, Brewer, Breezy, Kavanaugh, Chambers, Clements, Crawford, DeBoer, Dorn, Erdman, Friesen, Geist, Geiger, Groney, Halloran, Ben Hanson, Matt Hanson, Hilders, Helkeman, Howard, Hughes, Hunt, Kolowski, Colderman, Legrone, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Linehan, Lowe, McAllister, McDonald, Moorfeld, Moser, Merman, Pansy, Brooks, Quick, Shearer, Slama, Stinner, Vargas, Walls, Wayne, Williams, and Wishart. Voted 49 ayes, no nays, Mr. President.
LB 212 passes. Our next bill is LB 268. Mr. Clerk.
Ingress Law Bill 268, introduced by Friesen 34, Bill for Nuclear Nebraska Telecommunications Regulation Act, amendment 6136, used by statute Nebraska. Change preliminary filing application for certificate convenience assessment, repeal the original section made by the people of the state of Nebraska. 136, the completion of hearing on the application made 135. Hearings require the Commissioner to grant an application on part of the United following that would now receive the application number something that can be given to the principal community, some of the local area, then some to grant the application, and then not appear the capable to tell commission, then retain some that oppose on the original technology engine and the effective communication that was some effective and some that fair and will reverse the effective telecommunication company then precedent investment some by the commission upon some application and then negotiated between the applicant and the affected telecommunications company. Section 2, original section 86-136, revised statute Nebraska is repealed.
All provisions of law relative to procedure having been complied with. The question is, shall LB 268 pass? Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
Voting aye, Senators Albright, Arts, Blood, Bowles, Bostelman, Brandt, Brewer, Breezy, Kavanaugh, Chambers, Clements, Crawford, DeBoer, Dorn, Erdman, Friesen, Gregor, Groney, Halloran, Ben Hanson, Matt Hanson, Hilders, Helkeman, Howard, Hughes, Hunt, Kolowski, Holderman, Legrone, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Linehan, Lowe, McAllister, McDonald, Moorfeld, Moser, Merman, Pansy, Brooks, Quick, Shear, Slama, Stinner, Vargas, Walls, Wayne, Williams, and Wishart. Voting nay, none. Not voting, Senator Geist. Vote is 48 ayes, no nays, one present not voting, Mr. President.
LB 268 passes. Next bill is LB 316E.
Ingress Law Bill 316, enacted by Coldham 24, Breezy 41, a bill for declaring the pharmacy, providing pharmacists and contracting pharmacies regarding disclosure of price of co-payment in the prescription drug, prohibiting insurance from requiring excessive payments prescribed to defined terms, declaring emergency being enacted by the people of Sections 1. The purpose of the section contract is the pharmacy located in the care pharmacy upon the third direct contract, the contract, supplemental organization, purchasing or contracting agency, supplemental departments of the melodies of the slavery unit, but some there's no the state provided health insurance coverage. There's some the contract provided health insurance company because they're dependent upon the health care go through a policy contract with covered individual life insurance segment, some of the act and the state and good authors cover paid hospital medical care, managed health care, health maintenance organization, personnel insurance, substance and the person of work compensation court as self-covering entity. Pharmacy the same day 2832. The pharmacy the same 7425 main the person some the advantages who's the contractors employment relationship. So we got administration we're going to go in the terms and conditions of the pharmacy some the goes some the or listeners some the for their 2041 some the listen with the covered individual caregivers some like very good something because some at the point of sale and mouth they see the amount less than they invest company to pay some invest paying. Section 2, since an emergency exists, this action will take effect from and after its passage and approval according to law.
All provisions of law relative to procedure have been complied with. The question is, shall LB 316E pass with the emergency clause attached? Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Record, please.
Voting aye, Senators Albright, Arts, Blood, Bowles, Bostelman, Brandt, Brewer, Breezy, Kavanaugh, Chambers, Clements, Crawford, DeBoer, Dorn, Erdman, Friesen, Geist, Gregor, Groney, Halloran, Ben Hanson, Matt Hanson, Hilders, Helkeman, Howard, Hughes, Kolowski, Colderman, Legrone, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Linehan, Lowe, McAllister, McDonald, Moorfeld, Moser, Merman, Pansy, Brooks, Quick, Shear, Slama, Stinner, Vargas, Walls, Wayne, Williams, and Wishart. Voted 49 ayes, no nays on the final passage of the bill, Mr. President.
LB 316E passes with the emergency clause attached. Our next bill is LB 320. Mr. Clerk, the first vote is to dispense with the at-large reading. Those in favor of dispensing of the reading, vote aye. Those opposed, vote nay. Record, please.
34 ayes, 6 nays, Mr. President, to dispense with the at-large reading.
The at-large reading is dispensed with. Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Congressional Bill 320, introduced by Albright 17, a bill for inoculating the Pesticide Act, amend Section 2, 2628, 2630, 2632, 2637, 2640, 2643, 264302, 2645, 2653, reissue by statute Nebraska, Section 2, 2624, 2626, 2629, 2635, 2636, 2638, 2639, 2641, 2642, 2646, 2656, revised Act Cum-Sum 2018, to redefine terms, to update federal references, change Department of Agriculture powers and duties, change prevailing registration requirements and application service or process, labeling requirements, application fees, pesticide applicator and restricted use pesticide provisions, commercial, non-commercial, and private applicator licenses, non-certified applicator restrictions, record requirements, license holder duties, Hawaii license claims, damages, inspection, prohibited acts, to harmonize provisions and to repeal the original sections.
All provisions of law relative to procedure have been complied with. The question is, shall be 320 passed. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
Voting aye, Senators Albright, Arts, Blood, Bowles, Bostelman, Brandt, Brewer, Breezy, Kavanaugh, Chambers, Clements, Crawford, DeBoer, Dorn, Erdman, Friesen, Geis, Gregor, Groney, Halloran, Ben Hansen, Matt Hansen, Hilgers, Hilkeman, Howard, Hughes, Hunt, Kolowski, Colderman, Legrone, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Linehan, Lowe, McAllister, McDonald, Morfeld, Moser, Merman, Pansy, Brooks, Quick, Shear, Slama, Stinner, Vargas, Walls, Wayne, Williams, and Wishart. Vote is 49 ayes, no nays on the passage of the bill, Mr. President.
LB 320 passes. Before proceeding, Senator Coltman announces some guests visiting today. We have with us 65 fourth graders from the Milford Public Schools, Milford, Nebraska. Those students are with us in the north balcony. Milford fourth graders, please rise. I'd like to welcome you to the Nebraska Legislature. Our next bill is LB 352. Mr. Clerk.
Congressional Bill 352, and it will move forward to this Glenn McAllister 1,036, a bill for non-legal criminal procedure. To amend Section 291912, reissue by statute in Nebraska, to harm and require more testimony by jailhouse informants, to define terms, create duties of prosecutors, and provide for court orders, failure to comply settle duties within a provision of life, discovery of criminal offense, and harmonize provision of the real original section, being acted by the people of the Nebraska Section 1. Purpose section 1, the decision will be looking at direct and modification of the leases in the community. Financial payment records will be something we can be required to develop the offer of measures to allow for conduction of their testimony. The criminal proceeding in which the doesn't go something of bad witness. Jail last information for something the Kansas the custody jail correctional facility requires something to fail to benefit in connection to the testimony. Section 2 is one is charged with a felony. Each prosecutor is measure maintains everything. In case of trial list of the offer of bail judge formed against the suspect and defendant's interest. They do something who jailhouse forms against them to offenders may use the government that obtain. Any benefits of some jailhouse records of the administrator or something that lists informant is defenders and the event. Non-criminal has the jailhouse form that administration they get the testimony. The defenders of the case of the testified statement time they had some defense closer. something jealous and whether jealous informant request was offered safety and benefit in exchange for requires testimony. In the case of something the jail something this criminal proceedings of the question is a 30-day period. Court finds a claim to finish something close to the jail last warm to be course for making some every text on this, some listen to close on something except substance the section or something we find is something that can provide to give some Lindsay by giving the reduction by consider modification sentence. If at any time during the course of the proceedings brought the attention of the court that the prosecutor section 4 the section, the court may order the prosecutor's amount per his disclosure and a contingent per the prosecutor only will not disclose or incident never been not disclosed. And as such, the appropriate section 729/1912 is been reduced as follows. It's upon the require the accept the get them the predators to print the copy paragraphs and there was the tongue beginning. I think some knowledge, some knowledge, if there's among other things requesting the purpose of defense. Was not primarily the purpose of the trial upon the offense and under the request by the defendant, kind of reason, maybe something or other offensive things, some positive way, something of witnesses. Court reason the ground order person, the finding reason, the finding is based. No, the prosecuting to the granting of an order in this the possibility of bodily harm. Witnesses are we commission naked, listen to the person, we got like on the defendant. Section auto was jumping the final section 1 of the second. So we gave them the informant. Section 2, the original section 29/1912, reissued statute Nebraska is repealed.
All provisions of law relative to procedure have been complied with. The question is, shall LB 352 pass? Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Court, please.
Voting aye. Senators Albright, Arts, Blood, Bowles, Bostelman, Brandt, Brewer, Breezy, Kavanaugh, Chambers, Clemens, Crawford, DeBoer, Dorn, Urban, Friesen, Geist, Greger, DeHelleran, Ben Hansen, Matt Hansen, Hilders, Helkeman, Howard, Hughes, Hunt, Kowalski, Golden, Lagrone, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Lindan, Lowe, McAllister, McDonald, Moorfeld, Moser, Merman, Pansy, Rex, Quick, Shear, Slamas, Dinner, Vargas, Walls, Wayne, Williamson, Wishart. Voting nay. Senator Groney. Vote is 48 ayes, 1 nay, Mr. President, on the final passage of the bill.
LB 352 passes. Next bill is LB 390.
Engross Law Bill 390, enters of Appendix Brooks 20, Hand, Matt Hansen, Lynette 39, Walls 15, Wayne 13, Belvin, Public Safety, and Savannah, turn to the Department of Education, Law Enforcement, Agency Security, who relates to the law officer, and is prescribed and occupied by Section 1. Legislature finally declares up plans of the statement because some of the study work and its giving service, some of the listening look at us and the escape. Because of some possible something the question of the barriers, something other something delineate the responsibility to go resource up in this career, some of the funds and some of the thing all increasing school as an hours on the spirit and impacts to federal dynamic and something is going to our action and then something in this state is some little something so on some to better some the context otherwise requires. The State Department of Education, the state is responsible for the prevention of this, necessary law words. Law enforcement agencies include police department, the town marshal, county sheriff, and it's signed of 84 and 106. There's some that listen to 109. And if there's some that was some that because law enforcement system that not cheap, there's some that was not available. Security housing contract, security guards in the school district, some of the local laws and some security guards, some of the peace officer on 47/1/2019 or some that is one memorandum. Died never next to me, some of the model important. On our 20, some of the projects, so there is some model ranch, some law enforcement, superintendent, 3 months after his adoption, part of the memorandum from the Department of Public Website, and the school website. As if there was some conjecture, some companies, the school district website. Each member knows something, a second policy required to attend. This is something that shows with some days, some balance, goes, something, delineate reasons as rural demographic characteristics law enforcement investigation that student conduct this involves disciplinary school federation that's how you referral to law enforcement. File a complaint with school resource officer or security guard in the practice such school written this from the security guard with the law enforcement agency or security agency.
All provisions of law relative to procedure have been complied with. The question is, shall be 390 passed. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
Voting aye, Senators Albright, Arts, Blood, Bowles, Bostelman, Brandt, Brewer, Breezy, Kavanaugh, Chambers, Clements, Crawford, DeBoer, Dorn, Erdman, Friesen, Geis, Gregor, Roney, Halloran, Ben Hansen, Matt Hansen, Hilgers, Hilkeman, Howard, Hughes, Hunt, Golowski, Golderman, Lagrone, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Linhan, Lowe, McAllister, McDonald, Moorfeld, Merman, Pansy, Brooks, Quick, Shears, Slama, Stinner, Vargas, Walls, Wayne, Williams, and Wishart. Voting in none, not voting Senator Mosier. Vote is 48 ayes, no nays, one present, not voting, Mr. President.
LB 390 passes. Our next bill is LB 472. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, with respect to Legislative Bill 472, Senator Lowe would move to return the bill to select file for a specific amendment, that amendment being to strike the enacting clause.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Senator Lowe, you're recognized to open on your motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to slow things down a little bit here today and talk about 472. I rise today again to express my concerns with one selection of LB 472. To refresh everyone, my greatest concern is that we are creating the ability for a county to pass a sales tax without a vote of the people. One of the biggest concerns is that the individuals argued that this is needed because the people of the county will not support a ballot measure to do the same thing. I strongly object to this argument that we should create new standards because the people in a given political subdivision would not support a measure themselves. The precedent of allowing a sales tax without a vote of the people is extremely bad policy. The precedent of saying, well, if the people in a political subdivision do not want to vote to support something, we will just take away their ability to vote on the subject matter and do it anyway. This is not a good policy. We have argued here that we need to take things to the vote of the people. It is the vote of the people that make us the country that we are. We are a state that follows this guideline. But now because property tax is coming in the way, we're leaving our thoughts behind. We need to follow what is right. And the right way to do things is give it to the vote of the people. Let the people decide. This is a tax policy. It should not be in the hands of 5 people. And that is what it will be in. 2/3 vote of a county board will be 5 people. Now, I know they think that they may not have the vote if it goes to the people. But I disagree. Lincoln just passed a law, or passed a tax bill by the vote of the people to repair their streets. I think Lincoln is one of the highest tax cities in our state, and yet they agree that things need to be fixed. I believe the people of Gage County will see the need for things to be fixed. That is why I brought this amendment, to send it back to select. Because I think we need to talk about it some more. I don't think we ought to just brush this through. I think there are other ways to tackle this. I know the governor's reached out to give some assistance, a note with lower interest to Gage County. I would be proud to help negotiate that. Let's not change our ways and take away the people's vote. I feel sorry for Gage County and the predicament they're in. But we are going to do this again and again and again if we set this precedence. We will take away the vote of the people. We have to pay for our schools. We have to pay for our roads. Do we want to take away the vote of the people for that? For raising the levies? For doing other things? Should we let school boards decide to build buildings without a vote of the people? Should we allow county boards to put roads willy-nilly without a vote of the people? Mr. President, thank you very much.
Thanks, Senator Lowe. Discussion on the motion to return the bill. Senator Chambers.
Thank you. Mr. President, members of the legislature, to every one of those examples that Senator Lowe gave, I would say no, these things should not be allowed to be done without a vote of the people. This is a highly extraordinary set of circumstances, and I'm going to, before I get through, mention an aspect that makes me agree with Senator Dorn's bill. First of all, there has not been a time in the history of the state when a federal judgment of $28 million was handed down. That is not going to be done again. This is one of a kind. It is not going to occur. It is not establishing a precedent. I'm not even looking, Senator Lowe, at the people of Gage County. I'm looking at those victims, the ones who had all of those years of their lives taken from them, living under such psychological pressure, being terrified by the threat of execution for something they did not do, and thereby coerced into pleading guilty to something they did not do. Those people are entitled to have that judgment paid. This trickle idea that Senator Lowe has cannot, in my mind, even be considered from a moral standpoint. Those people are entitled to be compensated for what was done to them. This is the only way that that is going to happen. I had opposed strenuously giving an out to Gage County. This proposal is different from the kind that had come before. Senator Lathrop, during the last round of debate, laid it out very clearly and pointed out the opposition that existed with reference to other proposals that would try to make the state assume liability. So Senator Dorn, working with whomever he worked with, got busy to craft something that the majority of the senators go along with, including myself. Senator, I'm going to be in favor of requiring a vote before certain bond issues are allowed to take place. When it comes to citizens who have been wronged by the state, and by that I mean a governing body, those victimized citizens are the ones that I'm looking at. Their rights were violated. The Constitution relative to them was abrogated. The mandate that everybody be granted due process was thrown out the window. This is a way for the wrong that was done to those people to be purged. It's a way for atonement to occur. If another issue such as this came up where a county was going to try to do something of great significance without a vote of the people, I'd be right with Senator Lowe in everything that he is saying. Extraordinary circumstances call for extraordinary measures. This is one of a kind, sui generis. Now, nobody knows what that means.
1 minute.
I just thought I'd throw it in. Instead of using some heretofores, therefore, whereases. But it is one of those occurrences, and I want to emphasize that, which is not going to occur again. No county is going to be in the situation of Gage County again. There will always be prosecutors who try to extort false confessions from people. That's a different issue to be handled in a different way. We have an existing wrong that Senator Dorn has found a way to address to the extent that is possible. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Chambers. Additional discussion. Senator Moorfeld.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I just wanted to rise to correct the record. The city of Lincoln actually has fairly low taxes as compared to the rest of the cities throughout the state. They're using 32 cents of their 50-cent levy. So Senator Lowe's comment was incorrect, and after listening to all the comments on the hemp debate, I'm going to get up and start correcting some of the record on that. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Senator Moorfeld. Senator Lowe.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I'm sorry to the city of Lincoln I made that comment. But it was by the vote of the people that they voted this new tax in. And Senator Chambers, I don't want to give an old man a heart attack, but I stand with you on having these people paid. Their due, their justice. But this is not the right way to do it. It needs to be a vote of the people. When you raise taxes, it should come before the people, not a board and not a vote of 5. We wouldn't do that here. We wouldn't exclude the legislature to have the Judiciary Committee make decisions for us and have 5 people make the decision of everything we do here. We wouldn't allow it. And so we shouldn't allow a county board, a school board, or any other political subdivision to make the decision for us to raise our taxes. It's very important that we keep with the ways that they should be, not make special exemptions here and there. Because one special exemption will lead to another. And just because this is the first time that one of our counties is in this situation does not mean it will be the last time. Mistakes will be made again somewhere. We are human. And it may not be once again. It may be twice or 3 times. We have school system retirement right now that is in critical condition. And something's going to be done. And to fix that, it should come before the vote of the people. Just because this affects property tax, and it will fall back if this is not passed by the vote of the people, mostly on rural people, does not make it right for us to do this. And I have extreme sympathy for the rural people. I have extreme sympathy for those incarcerated for this crime that we're now seeking reparations for. I understand what Senator Dorn has done and why he did it. They're trying to find an answer. And I sympathize with him. But we must continue doing things the proper way. We must continue, when we're raising our taxes, to take it to the vote of the people. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Lowe. Senator Dorn.
Good morning, President. Good morning, colleagues. I want to get up and talk a little bit on this also. I think everybody knows the situation Gage County is in. We have a $30 million judgment. The judgment's due. The courts have decided that it will be paid. Currently, under state statute, under laws that this body did make, the only way to pay that is by property taxes. 100% of that judgment will be paid by property taxes. I agree with Senator Lowe's comment. When we raise taxes, we should put that to a vote of the people. Gage County did not get to put to a vote of the people about raising the property taxes to pay this. The courts decided that. This body decided that. I agree with his part that we should put that to a vote of the people. This is a unique situation, what Senator Chambers said. If we put this to a vote of the people and we put it to a vote of the people on property tax and on this sales tax, neither one would pass. We don't want to go down that road. I've been advised by lawyers we do not want to go down that road. The property tax part here was by a vote of the board. That board is elected by a vote of the people. Senator Williams yesterday made a comment on the floor. We are a form of government that does not put every vote to a vote of the people. The property tax part of this did not get to go to a vote of the people. All I'm asking with this sales tax bill is to help pay that $30 million judgment by the sales tax and having the board approve that. I understand what Senator Lowe is trying to do. I also want to make one final comment, and that is please vote green for 472. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Dorn. Senator Lowe, it's your third opportunity, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. This will be my third time and most likely my last time to speak on this, because not many are standing up to support the vote of the people today, and that's a shame. I understand that this is out of the ordinary, something that doesn't happen every day. But that doesn't make it right. There are many things we've fought on this floor that we've stood strong on because of the way we believe our country ought to be run and our state ought to be run. And now we make an exception. I believe in the people. I believe the people will be right. We have taken the vote for Medicaid, and now that will be implemented by the vote of the people. I stand by the people. I didn't agree with the concept of it, but the people have spoken. That's very important. And Senator Chambers, thank you for standing up and speaking, that you would normally believe in this. I honor that. Senator Dorn, thank you for bringing a bill for your people. Matter of fact, I think you brought several bills to try to solve this situation, and this is the one that got advanced. I would still like to see other ways for this to get solved. People deserve a chance to vote on this. Don't take it away from the people. This is a very bad precedent that we're starting. And our silence is deafening. The people's silence is deafening. We need to continue to support the people, support the way that our state and our country is to be run, and let's not do this today. Support FA 48. Let's send this back to select file so we can talk on this. We can take a little bit more time, and maybe we can find a better solution. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Lowe. Senator Erdman.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Good morning again. Senator Lowe, I want to tell you, I appreciate your steadfastness and your convictions. What you're doing is what you believe to be right, and I appreciate that. Senator Dorn made comments about what happens if they don't pass the sales tax. I understand that. And I understand your comments about Lincoln voting for the sales tax to repair their streets. I'm not sure Lincoln needed that. They have plenty of reserve. They could have done that. But irregardless, Senator Lowe, I tell you that it's a pleasure to serve with a guy who has convictions, and I appreciate it. And if you'd like, I would yield you the rest of my time.
Thanks, Senator Erdman. Senator Lowe, you've been yielded 4 minutes.
Thank you, Senator Erdman, and I appreciate the text. You know, 1 week ago, we had this debate. A week ago Wednesday, on whether or not we ought to do this. I put in Amendment 1223. Local governments are required to pay for K through 12 education. Do we want the school boards to build millions of dollars worth of buildings without the people saying okay? The last I knew, we passed bonds to do this, and the bond had to be by the vote of the people. To build roads, city governments, it needs to be the vote of the people to pass those bonds. And now we're going to make an exception for Gage County. Gage County is in trouble. And I believe everyone on this floor understands that. I understand that. But let's do this the right way. Let's give it to the vote of the people and let Gage County decide that they're all in or they're going to make their neighbors in the country pay a more of a percentage of this tax. Let the people of Gage County decide. That's the right thing to do. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Lowe. Senator Lowe, you're recognized to close on your motion to return the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I urge everyone to vote for FA 48, send this back to select file so we can take a little bit more time to solve this problem. This problem needs to be solved, but it doesn't need to be solved this way. There are other methods. Nebraska will find a way to do this without making an exception. I believe in Nebraska. I believe in the people. I believe in the people of Gage County when they go to the ballot box to vote. This is the way we ought to do things. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Lowe. Members, you've heard the debate on the motion. The question before the body is to return the bill to select file. For specific amendment, those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted here too? Record, please.
6 ayes, 32 nays on the motion to return, Mr. President.
Motion is not adopted. Returning to LB 472. Mr. Clerk, the first vote is dispense with the at-large reading. Those in favor of dispensing the reading vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Record, please.
34 ayes, 8 nays to dispense with the at-large reading.
The at-large reading is dispensed with. Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Engross Leather Bill 472, introduced by Dorn 30, Brand 32, DeVore 10, Erdman 47, Friesen 34, Rooney 42, McCollister 20, Merman 38. A bill for enacting revenue and taxation, amend section 13, 319, 392510, 392520, 77270301, 772304, 77270431, 772708, 772711, 77271205, 775725, 775726, reissue by statute of Nebraska to adopt the Qualified Judgment Payment Act, to provide for sales and use tax and a property tax levy, to provide a termination date, to harmonize provisions, and to repeal the original sections.
All provisions of law relative to procedure have been complied with. The question is, shall LB 472 pass? Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Record, please.
Voting aye, Senators Arch, Blood, Bowles, Bostelman, Brandt, Brewer, Breezy, Kavanaugh, Chambers, Clements, Crawford, DeBoer, Dorn, Erden, Friesen, Gregor, Groney, Halloran, Ben Hansen, Matt Hansen, Hilkeman, Howard, Hughes, Hunt, Kolosky, Colderman, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Linehan, McAllister, McDonald, Morfeld, Moser, Merman, Pansy Brooks, Quick, Shear, Stinner, Vargas, Walls, Wayne, Williams, and Wishart. Voting nay, Senators Albright, Geist, Hilgers, LaGrone, Lowe, and Slama. Voted 43 yeas, 6 nays on the final passage of the bill, Mr. President.
LB 472 passes. Proceeding to LB 514.
Congress Law Bill 514, it is Bill More 46, Bill for non crimes and offenses, amendment section 186, 11, issue of West University, advisor current possible as words of the section of passing of a check or other to be second being up to section 1. 26, 11, issue of West statute amended any obtained for something that check credits of a character passing a check shows something that we know he is not credit from a payment system in order before president comes information about check issue about check or something that 500,000 or more. That's 4 felonies, something that less than $5,000 class 1 misdemeanor. This is the $500 or more, less than $1,500 class 2 misdemeanor amount of check at less than $500. The argument is that 60 may be used to determine the classification of subdivision in this section. That checks or assignments and other not made one offense. And second, something that was submitted to class 4 felony. When otherwise issue passage, there's no these not sufficient there's less than representation be class 2 misdemeanor. Any person who violates the second of all except notice and the pay $10 to the injured party, reasonable hand of the party of the financial institution, and because of shall be received notice and that is sufficient to come the drawing payment because of the 30 days after this is within 10 days after the notice of notice and the return to the deposits of the person of the county attorney by the Department of the United States mail as an address. Upon request of the deposit and payment of $10, submit to required to know submit the draft check or otherwise. To provide this action, they pay the county treasurer submit the court as due to the office. Any person convicted of violation of the identified records of the party and to advise check and they will pay it to the injured based on the people by the agent of the financial institution. It is makes such written concur with the sentence of imprisonment. Back to some shall be a mitigating factor in the imposition of punishment in violation of this section. Section 2, original section 28, section 11, issued by statute Nebraska is repealed.
All provisions of law relative to procedure have been complied with. The question is, shall LB 514 pass? Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
Voting aye, Senators Albright, Arch, Blood, Bowles, Bostelman, Brandt, Brewer, Breezy, Kavanaugh, Chambers, Clements, Crawford, DeBoer, Dorn, Urban, Friesen, Geist, Gregor, Groney, Halloran, Ben Hansen, Matt Hansen, Hilders, Hilkeman, Howard, Hughes, Hunt, Kolosky, Colderman, LaGrone, Lathrop, Linston, Linehan, Lowe, McAllister, McDonald, Morfeld, Moser, Merman, Benjaberg, Quick, Shear, Slama, Stinner, Vargas, Walls, Wayne, Williams, and Wishart. Voted 49 ayes, no nays on the final passage of the bill.
LB 514 passes. LB 603.
In Grid Legislative Bill 603 and a list of 18, Buffalo Bank makes 15701 issue come to the chamber relating to automated teller machines, however, is briefly section. Being acted by people, section 1, section to finance, banking, finance, the cash withdrawal, transfer from checking and savings, can't transfer from savings, can't checking, can't notice something, can't other guys payment to customer, can't make other parties, something to catch it, something to something to can't catch something to finance. Into the general public, maybe you can some financial institution because that venture parents banking. Any financial with something financial because system to get one person or an automatic teller machine transaction received from the automated teller machine and same financial institution or data for some that is an automatic something to this section. So the requirements of this manager and the particular switches the responsibility some the 2018 or something that could be on a paper issue or something that they initiated right from the transaction. Point of sale terminal, they point to the president finance and the supervisors and the conduct delegates and the operation point of sale terminal. So if good is something to be established on these or the bridge established something to the point of sale and I was sending Navi deemed to be engaging in business banking some of the authority of finance of the pride of the decisions of the right on September 1. Nothing besides no declaring as trans of finance institutions. There's some new finance now, Casman, when was it the automatic teller machine, some little funds that we consider purpose of the automatic teller. It is something that we use a country, some new finance, some these companies in the section. Agreement to operate in all of something now be limited to something that is now there's something that was a further loss, something that by the department. I think the section will group 2 more credit, something purpose only get automatic teller machine. But something that with the automatic teller machine, something that a transaction into something on a non-discriminating basis, automatic this kind of all the same as ours and such. I made them the something individual. No point is out there, but it's going to be electronic and something about these things in the customer. Only make us some the which fees some the authorizing financial and the case of the budget. Surcharge is not opposed to some the main charge of is the state of Nebraska. Finance of my telemachines is something listen the subject and identity. Finance and find them the United States or something banking or something which going to something like I guess some financial institution. 3 stories regarding them directly into his on the telemachine or something the business transaction. Banking account of the customer, something they listen to on finance and their body something and the printed finance something the charter something the state of water something the section 2 original section 8 15701 there revised statute sub 2018 is repealed.
All provisions of law relative to procedure have been complied with. The question is, shall be 603 passed. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted? Care to record?
Voting aye, Senators Albright, Arts, Blood, Bowles, Bostelman, Brandt, Brewer, Breezy, Kavanaugh, Chambers, Clemens, Crawford, DeBoer, Dorn, Erdman, Friesen, Geis, Gregor, Groney, Halloran, Ben Henson, Matt Hanson, Hilgers, Hilkeman, Howard, Hughes, Hunt, Kolowski, Colderman, Legrone, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Linehan, Lowe, McAllister, McDonald, Morfeld, Moser, Merman, Pansy, Brooks, Quick, Shears, Lama, Stinner, Vargas, Walls, Wayne, Williams, and Wishart. Voted 49 ayes, no nays on the final passage of the bill.
LB 603 passes. Next bill is LB 637E.
Ingress Bill 637, by Stinner 48, Bill for Business Development. It's provided to the rest of authorized sales, series, and promotional products, change provision, vendor duties, harmonized provision, repeal the section, declare an emergency being activated with section 1, submit to the shipping on Nebraska Business, submit to listen to the basic administrative vendors, prepare and approve budgets, conduct the data, the upcoming year, authorize the expenditure of the funds, contracting expenditure, keep it norm business hours, and county public office, state or federal legislation. Have the United Marketing Materials provided aid with their less of the marketing campaigns and carrying out some that establishment policies and proceeding the execution of the commission of the extra and the commissioners and authorized some functions for the various coordinating working developing the beneficial bargaining the state of niggas and the University of Nebraska some realistic working approved by the commissioners of the service of the design 13728. Excellent thing was the basis because the Glen 9 there's about tourism commission per cash fund. Section 5 original section 813701, 3711, 813728 revised said use of 2018 are repealed. Section 6 as emergency exists. This action will take effect and pass and approved according to law.
All provisions of law relative to procedure. The question is, shall LB 637E pass with the emergency clause attached? Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Record, please.
Voting aye, Senators Albright, Arts, Blood, Bowles, Bostelman, Brandt, Brewer, Breezy, Kavanaugh, Chambers, Clemens, Crawford, DeBoer, Dorn, Urban, Friesen, Geis, Gregor, Groney, Halloran, Ben Hanson, Matt Hanson, Hilgers, Hilkeman, Howard, Hughes, Hunt, Kolowski, Colderman, Legrone, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Linehan, Lowe, McAllister, McDonald, Morfeld, Moser, Merman, Pansy, Brooks, Quick, Shears, Lama, Stinner, Vargas, Walls, Wayne, Williams, and Wishart. Voted 49 ayes, no nays on the final passage of the bill.
LB 637E passes with the emergency clause attached. Before proceeding, Senator Lathrop announces we have 64th graders with us today from Disney Elementary School in Millard, Nebraska. Those students are with us in the north balcony and a couple of them under the south balcony. Those students in the north balcony could please rise. I'd like to welcome you to the Nebraska Legislature. Legislative Bill 713.
Engrossed Legislative Bill 713, introduced by Senator Vargas, is a bill for an act relating to the legislature, amend Section 504019, reissues fine statute provided for the legislative fiscal office, repeal the original section, be it enacted by the people of the state of Nebraska. Section 1 of the legislative file declares that research conducted since 2009 by the University of Nebraska at the request of the legislature shows population of Nebraska becoming more concentrated in the population, with 2/3 of the country showing dramatic drop in the population of Nebraska is age of the population of Nebraska becoming more diverse. Is in the best interest of the economy, the participant elected trust. Legislative Fiscal Office and the partial of the Legislature Planning Committee of Nebraska is to protect long-term fiscal revenue and expenditure measures to federal policy. The state is constitutionally prohibited from incurring revenue which causes the legislature to bleed the cash reserves from one half biennial. Registration over the next two biennials is essential if states meet the obligation to adapt the changes of the data collected by the Legislative Planning Committee. Section 2, Section 5419 revised is amended to read 5419. The legislative shall provide fiscal and budgetary information to assist the legislation and the appropriations committee during sessions. The legislature should work under the direction of the appropriation committee during this interim legislative the direction of the legislative council. The legislature shall provide factual information for records, financial evaluation of the request of the board, and the recommendations thereof studies the capital overlay needs for the overlay and coordinated development of institutional programs authorized, if not planned, for legislative appropriation control funds the process budget. Following cycle of analysis, short-term in odd numbered years, budget stress comparing spending for each revenue, expenditure, major funds, taxpayer barriers, 6-month petitions every 4 years long budget. Programs appropriated for funds of tax type his or due to show includes examining the functions authorized the legislature and determine funds are expended according to the legislative intent, whether organizational performance or possible examine the functions, also including the appraisal of functions for new reforms. So due shall be coordinating their activities, the budget officer, administrative services, all promotion reports, and the fiscal and appropriations committee shall be available to any and all members of the legislature. The legislative fiscal committee shall provide revenue forecasting information and assist the legislative revenue to the legislature and Appropriation Committee of the Legislature for the purpose of this subsection should work under the direction of the Revenue Committee of the Legislature. Appropriation Committee of the Legislature revenue forecasting subjects include the estimated revenue receipts for the following by end comparisons of current estimates for each major tax type, long-term tax type, total funds for long-term tax type, transit tax fund receipts for the transfer general fund reserves, listed the express obligations, summary of economic effect in the state of Nebraska. Section 3, original Section 5019 revised statute of the state of Nebraska is repealed.
All provisions of law relative to procedure have been complied with. The question is, shall LB 713 pass? Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Record, please.
Voting aye, Senators Albright, Arch, Blood, Bowles, Bosselman, Brandt, Brewer, Breezy, Kavanaugh, Chambers, Clements, Crawford, DeBoer, Dorn, Erdman, Geist, Greger, Groney, Holler, and Hanson, Hilgers, Hilkeman, Howard, Hughes, Hunt, Kolowski, Colterman, Legrone, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Linehan, Lowe, McCollister, McDonald, Morfeld, Mosier, Merman, Pansing, Brooks, Quick, Shears, Thomas, Dinner, Vargas, Walls, Wayne, Williams, Wisher. The vote is 49 ayes, no nays. Mr. President.
LB 713 passes. And finally, LR 14CA.
Mr. President, engrossed legislative resolution 14CA, proposed constitutional amendment introduced by Wayne. The members of the 106th Legislature of Nebraska first section resolved that Section 1 of the general election of November 2020, the following proposed 812 for the purpose of rehabilitating required and redevelopment of standard blighted property and the redevelopment is determined by the law, city, village, may not without any provision of the Constitution without regard to the character, limitation, restrictions, incurred debt, by other bonds of advance of the money and otherwise not substantially the provision of the Constitution, the charters interested may also pledge and apply for the payment of principal and interest, premium bonds and all the tax bodies on the assessed valuation of the property and the property there is designed, blighted, and substituted to the exact of the valuation of the property for the redeveloped cities, villages may pledge to such for the period not to exceed 15 years, except for the delivery of the cities to pledge and takes not to exceed 20 years with a high power raise to allow more than half of the property in the area is designed to exclude divide when the legitimacy of the interests are unfold such properties that are respective to tax jurisdiction, tax applied in all taxes of the respective taxing body. The proposed amendment should be submitted to the legislators in the manner described in the Constitution. Article 16 for the following land use constitutions amount authorized voting to allow cities and villages to pledge property tax part of the renewal for a period of not 20 years and if due to higher combined with high property dislodge more than one half the property in the project area is extremely blighted. For or against.
All provisions of law relative to procedure have been complied with. The question is, shall R 14CA pass? Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
Voting aye, Senators Albright, Arch, Blood, Bowles, Bostelman, Brandt, Brewer, Breezy, Kavanaugh, Chambers, Crawford, DeBoer, Dorn, Friesen, Geist, Gregor, Holleran, Matt Hanson, Hilgers, Hilkeman, Howard, Hughes, Hunt, Kalowski, Coulterman, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Linehan, Collister, McDonald, Morfeld, Mosier, Merman, Pansing, Brooks, Quick, Shear, Slama, Stinner, Vargas, Walls, Wayne, Wisher, Williams. Voting nay, Senators Erdman and Groney. Not voting, Senators Clements, Ben Hanson, LeGrone, and Lowe. The vote is 43 ayes, 2 nays, 4 present not voting, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. LR 14CA passes. While the legislature is in session and capable of transacting business, I propose to sign and do hereby sign the following legislative bills. LB 59, LB 87, LB 212, LB 268, LB 316E, LB 320, LB 352, LB 390, LB 472, LB 514, LB 603, LB 637E, LB 713, and LR 14CA. That will conclude final reading. We'll now move to select file, which will require voice votes. Members, please be attentive to the voice votes. Before that, Mr. Clerk, are there any items for the record?
There are, Mr. President. I have new resolutions, LR 87, 88, 89, 87 by Senators Crawford, 88 by McCollister, and 89 by Hughes. New A bill, legislative bill 532A by Senator Kavanaugh. It's a bill for an act to appropriate funds to implement the provisions of LB 532. That's all that I have, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. We'll now proceed to select file. First bill is LB 177. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, with respect to 177, Senator no E&Rs. Senator Erdman, I understand you wish to withdraw AM 1408.
That is correct.
Amendments withdrawn.
Senator Erdman would move to amend with floor amendment 50.
Senator Erdman, you're recognized to open an FA 50.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor, and good morning. The discussion over the last couple of days seems to center around allowing the voters to vote when we do bonding or raise taxes. And I appreciate that conversation. Senator Lowe took the time this morning to mention that. Senator Chambers mentioned it. Senator Vargas, in his bill earlier this week, presented a proposal that would allow voters to vote on whether they raise taxes on their cell phones. So here we are this morning on 177, and I spoke in opposition to 177 on general file. And from that time until this, I've done a little more research. And so before you today is FA 50. And basically, it's a very simple amendment. It strikes the sunset of 2024 and replaces it with 19. That was the original intent of the bill 10 years ago. We, as a body, seldom allow things to sunset. And just as a precursor to what's coming in the future, the Nebraska Advantage Act is scheduled to sunset, and I will bet money, even with Senator Chambers on this one, that that will not happen. Sunsets are put in place for a reason. You run the 10 years, you look at what happened, what was accomplished, and whether it needs to continue or not. The information that we will present today will be beyond a shadow of a doubt proof that this bonding authority for this NRD is not needed. This NRD has spent millions of dollars to do things that aren't in their charge. And last time when we spoke on 177, I had made a comment that they had $24 million in a cash reserve, $4 million about was restricted, and the other $20.9 million was not. Senator Lindstrom took exception to the $20.9 million being assigned to something. Standing up on the mic and saying that the $20.9 million is assigned to something means absolutely nothing. I have not seen any documentation that proves that that $20.9 million is restricted in any way except by the opinion of the board. There have been many things that have come to light about what this NRD is doing and how this NRD is managed, and we'll get an opportunity to talk about those as well. But the current mill levy for this NRD is just over 0.037594. They have an opportunity, they have the ability to go to 4.5 mills. They are charging now, they're collecting about 0.067 cents on their bonded indebtedness. So over the last several years, their mill levy has remained steady, and they what shall I say, advertise that we've left our mill levy the same or we've decreased it. But what they don't tell you is how much their valuation has gone up. And earlier this year, when the hearing was had on LB 177, the director, the board of director, president, chairman came in and testified that they left their mill levy the same or decreased it. So therefore, they're very conservative in their spending in the way they handle tax dollars. But what he didn't say was how much their spending went up. At the same time, when they lower their mill levy a minute amount, their spending goes up millions of dollars because their mill levy, because their valuation goes up. This NRD, Papio NRD, has the largest valuation of any NRD in the state. Over $66 billion. That's with a B, $66 billion. That is a significant valuation. They have built dams, and they call them for flood purposes. They have built dams that are for economic development. This NRD took it to a vote of the people to have bonding, and it failed. What was amazing to me was when I looked at to see who contributed to advertising to get the bond passed and how much money was contributed, it amazed me. That effort was called, I believe, Get the Job Done, PAC, and they spent almost $111,000 in advertising trying to get the voters to approve their bond approval. So I looked through the list, and it comes to mind it was kind of unusual or peculiar to me. We had HDR Inc., I would assume that's some kind of a contracting or construction company, $10,000. Lyman Ritchie Corporation, perhaps a construction company, $10,000. Midwest Right-of-Way Services, $5,000. Here's one of interest. I'm sure this is, these people were very interested in flood protection. The Omaha Area Board of Realtors, they're very concerned about flood protection, and the list goes on. So what I'm trying to say here is we have an opportunity to protect the taxpayers in the NRD that is represented by Papio. Now, there are many senators in this room that are affected by this NRD. There are more senators in this room today, in this chamber, affected by this NRD than perhaps 2/3 of the rest of the NRDs. For you see, it encompasses all of Omaha, Sarpy County. It's an amazing, amazing NRD. So the people in Senator Chambers' district, if they own real estate, they make a contribution to the NRD. And rightfully so, they get some benefit, indirect benefit from the NRD. But what they don't get benefit from is when they build the dam and then they sell lots next to that dam for $90,000 or $100,000 or $200,000 or $600,000. That is not the intent of the NRD. That was not what NRDs were intended to do. So we've kind of run off the track. And so what we want to do is allow them the opportunity to do what they do within the parameters that have already been set. If they raise their mill levy to the 4.5 mills that they're allowed to do, and if they would take their bonded indebtedness that they have left, they could raise about another $6 million annually, which would offset anything that they need to do. My opinion is this: if you take it to the vote of the people, and the people said no, that's exactly what you should do. But that's not what they want to do. They want to continue to have the opportunity to spend more money for economic development. Has nothing to do with flood control. They've built dams for flood control that you have to pump water into. Now think about that just a second. They build a dam for flood control, but there's no creek that flows into that, no river, no water. So they pump water into that dam to maintain the level. Now, I may be simple, but I don't get how that can be flood control when you have to pump the water into the dam.
1 minute.
Thank you, sir. So we will have opportunity to discuss many more things in this regard, but this is a chance, this is an opportunity for us, rural senators, urban senators, to vote on property tax relief for those people who live in Senator Vargas and Senator Wayne's district. We can help them. We can work together to solve this problem, and letting it sunset is the correct solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Erdman. Before proceeding, Senator Hilkeman announces some guests visiting today. We have with us 65 fourth graders from the Ezra Elementary School in Millard, Nebraska. Those students are with us in the North Balcony with the Ezra fourth graders. Please rise. I'd like to welcome you to the Nebraska Legislature. And Senator Pansing Brooks has some special guests visiting today. Under the North Balcony, we have with us Kennedy, Autumn, Scarlett, Ella, and Carrie Payton, all of Lincoln, Nebraska. With those guests, please rise. I'd like to welcome you to the Nebraska Legislature. Discussion of FA 50. Senator Lindstrom.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think it goes without saying that FA 50 is not a friendly amendment and would urge the body to vote red. We had this discussion on Generify with regards to something that was brought up with the $29 million that had been spent. When I've talked to the general manager, John Winkler, and what he laid out to me, there are 8 projects in the works where that money has been committed. The excess of $700,000 is there a couple months of operating costs. So those projects have already been committed. There are restrictions, and it's been brought up to the vote of the people. It currently stands that way. If you, with the 4.5 cent maximum levy that the NRDs have, if they use 2 cents of that under that lid, it goes to the vote of the people. And it has been tried before, and it did get voted down, which is part of the process. It's been talked about that these aren't necessary. I would again point out that Omaha and their surrounding areas did not get hit as hard as other parts of the state. That was due to a lot of the projects that have been done over the years, and there's many more. There was an article today that talked about the population migration from the western part to the eastern part. Well, there are going to be other projects that needed to make sure that flooding does not occur in those areas as we grow in that Sarpy County, Douglas County, and Washington County area. Some of the restrictions that are already placed on these bonds, 2.5 of the board of directors of the NRD must approve the projects. The bond debt service must fit within the NRD statutory authority property tax mill levy limit of 4.5 cents per $100 valuation, and they can never exceed that 4.5 cents. Projects must be more than 400 surface acres in that permanent pool are not allowed. Projects with more than 200 surface acres in the permanent pool must provide public access. So if we want to continue on that, I have a whole other list of restrictions that are on that are part of this process. But again, I would urge the body to vote no on FA 50 and let LB 177 continue on to final reading. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Lindstrom. Senator Albright.
Thank you, and good morning. Thank you, President Foley, and good morning, Nebraska. Senator Erdman, I just want to thank you for bringing F50. Gives us all a little bit more time to talk about this. It was a quick slam dunk on 177 first round, and this is where we have had enough time to put a few more things together and ask a few more questions. You know, the Papio, Missouri has a mission, and it is to wisely conserve, manage, and enhance our soil, water, wildlife, forest resources for the good of all people residing within the district's boundaries. With that said, I want to walk through a summary of what has taken place up to this point, which I have questions about. If in fact they have 8 projects committed, and if in fact all directors voted on those 8 projects, I'd like to be able to research that before this goes forward. And I'd also like to find out if all directors voted on this particular question or this particular bill that we're talking about was voted on by their directors. I would like to know if the general manager of the Papio NRD had the authority to come to us to ask for this extension, or if this wasn't voted on by their directors, I'd like to know why. And with that, I want to talk a little bit about the Papio, Missouri NRD. It is the largest property tax base in the state, over $66 billion. It includes Douglas, Sarpy, Washington, Burt, and a portion of Thurston and Dakota, which I represent. The valuation in the Papio, Missouri NRD increases more than 4% every year. The average annual increase in spending by the Papio is 7%. The Papio NRD is the only NRD with bonding authority. You know the other NRDs want bonding authority as well. The Papio NRD's history of increasing their taxing authority: in 2006, they attempted to gain bonding authority, and it was indefinitely postponed. In 2007, they attempted to gain bonding authority. It also was IPP'd, indefinitely postponed. In 2009, they gained bonding authority on LB 160, which sunset in 2019. 1 cent by the board and 1 cent by the vote of the people. In 2014, they attempted authority for general bonding obligation bonds. It was indefinitely postponed. In 2015, they attempted the authority for general obligation bonds. It too indefinitely postponed. In 2016, they attempted, by the vote of the people, for additional 1 cent. It was defeated at the polls. In 2019, attempting to extend 160 sunset to 2029. Today, they're only asking for the 5-year, not 10-year on 177. The Papio NRD has a long history of working with developers. I will stand up here and I will give them their accolades for what they have accomplished. But at this point, with this bill coming before us well before the floods ever occurred on March 13th of this year, and asking for that authority, again, I want to take a look at the eight projects they currently have on the books. I'd like to learn more about those. And again, find out if it was voted on by the directors all at one time.
1 minute.
And the reason the Papio NRD uses their bonding of taxpayer dollars to build multi-purpose reservoirs They intend to spend an additional $100 million if LB 177 is approved by this body. $100 million. Typically, these reservoirs or wet dams are surrounded by expensive houses developed by the Omaha area housing developers in cooperation with the Papio Missouri River NRDs. Not that I'm against economic development, I get that, but I hope you all recall those photos that I had laid on your desks on 177 that we didn't have a lot of time to talk about. But not all publicly funded NRD lakes are easily accessible to the public, which I would think if you spend the kind of money they do on those particular dams, you should be able to share that with the public. Newport Landing in Bennington is a perfect example. During the general file, the pictures that I distributed were lakeside lots. The lots alone were from $90,000 to $550,000. That's just for the lots. Beautiful area. I'll give them that.
Senator.
Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Albright. Senator Erdman.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Senator Albright, thank you for your information. Thank you for your sharing that. You know, as I looked at some of the information that was distributed and put out by the NRD, some of the things that were troubling were the misinformation that they put out, and when the hearing was held, the conversation and the questions were asked about did you raise your mill levy, what was the spending, and so what happened in the case of the Papio NRD is they've kept their mill levy pretty consistent, and they haven't raised it because they didn't need to, because their valuation continues to go up. And so let me share what happened over just a short period of time. In 2013, 12-13, their valuation was $52,598,000,000. Just 6 years later, 18-19, the valuation was $66,031,000,000. So that's an annual increase of 4%, Senator Dorn, 4%. So you were a county commissioner, and you understand mill levies. And if you leave your mill levy the same, and your valuation increases by 4%, you get 4% more money. So at the same time, they're putting out this propaganda that they were spending the taxpayers' money wisely, and that they were not increasing their taxes. They didn't tell it wasn't a lie, it was just not the whole truth. And so earlier this year, we passed a bill, LB 103. LB 103, Senator Linehan brought that bill that said it's a truth in advertising, so they'll have to tell us how much their budget has increased year over year. So they can't use this deception any longer. And so consequently, just in 1 year, between 17-18, 18-19, their valuation went up $552 million. That will continue, and as it continues to go up, they will collect more taxes, and they'll leave their mill levy the same. And so those are the things that they present, and then they will tell you that what they have done protected everyone from the flooding. But they made an emergency declaration last week for FEMA resources, when in fact they didn't have any damage from the flood, and what dams they have built were sufficient to hold any floodwaters that may have come. So they have accomplished their purpose, and Senator Albright had alluded to that and gave him kudos in that regard, and I would agree. But what they didn't tell you, and I don't know if I'll get a chance to cover that this time, but I will the next, is when they sent out, the manager sent out the emergency declaration, he did not contact all of the directors. He contacted the ones that he wanted to contact. And I have an email was sent out to the directors. I have a copy of it. And I'll be able to show you that he contacted the ones he needed to contact, and he left out others. Now, I don't know about the boards you serve on, But when I served on boards, if I wasn't included in such a declaration or asked to vote on it, I'd be very concerned about the way the manager is running the organization. There is a trend here. There's a trend that this organization is managed and run by a couple people, perhaps the manager and the board chairman and maybe some other few individuals that are on the board. But it is not at all inclusive of all directors. Did you say time, sir?
Actually, about 40 seconds.
Okay, thank you. So we'll get a chance to read those emails. I'll get a chance to share that with you. And those emails that I've received are from people who are on the board. So I will be able to share those with you. They are very, very enlightening of how this organization is run. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Senator Urban. Senator Ben Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I did speak on this a little bit last time I was up here about some of my concerns with this bill and the concerns of my constituents in Washington County about the effects that it can have with our county. So and this is one of the things I kind of mentioned as a possible solution to the issue and some of the concerns that this might help alleviate. There is a Papio Creek general reevaluation study that is planned, from my understanding. And the United States Army Corps of Engineers has launched a reevaluation study of the Papillion Creek and Tributaries Lakes, Nebraska report, a comprehensive plan to reduce flood risks for the Papio Creek Basin. The plan was authorized in the Flood Control Act of 1968, and 9 of the 21 dams were constructed either by the Corps or the Papio NRD. So the purpose of this study, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, it is a 3-year study and is to address the flood risk issues in order to reduce flood and life safety risks in the Papio Creek Basin that have increased due to rapid land development. Urban development within the floodplain has resulted in approximately 4,700 structures within the 500-year floodplain with an approximate structure value of $1.9 billion. And so the 3-year study provides local and federal officials the opportunity to provide a comprehensive re-examination of all potential solutions to flood risk in the greater Omaha area. The Corps anticipates a draft study to be completed this fall with approval of the final recommendation plan slated for April of 2021. So if there are some concerns about this whole issue about what we should do, I think it might be a little prudent on our part to kind of wait for this study to come out to get a better idea of what we're handling. And I think there are also some other alternatives to some of the solutions put forth by the NRD that Washington County has used effectively, including dry dams, terracing, wetlands, and buffer strips. So I'd like to see farmers have a little more management of their groundwater instead of an overreach by the NRD, which is a little bit of a concern of mine in Washington County. And with the rest of my time, I'll yield it to Senator Erdman if he so chooses.
Thanks, Senator Hansen. Senator Urban, 2 minutes 15.
Thank you, Senator Hansen. So what we see as a tactic or the way public information is shared, they say things like this: perhaps the most flood-prone area in the state is in the NRD, the Papio NRD. That may not be exactly the story. The Papio Creek watershed drains heavy rains and snowmelt. Well, I'll tell you what, it drains all rain and snowmelt. It's how you word this that makes a difference. The Omaha area has long been prone to disastrous flooding. Many times its creeks, the Papio watershed, have overflowed, causing tragic loss. An important effort is underway to reduce the risk of flooding and to prevent considerable loss of life and property that would occur in future flooding events. As I mentioned earlier, they have built dams that they have to pump water into.
1 minute.
I'm not quite sure how important that is to flooding. If you shut the pump off, I think your dam will be fine if there's no water getting in there. And that dam that they created, they said, prevents a risk of flooding about 1.22%. I mean, it's insignificant. And so those are the things that they put out there on their website, and they try to lead people to believe the sky is falling, and we have to have bonding authority or we're all going to drown the next time it rains. That is not the case. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Erdman. Senator Groney.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand in support of FA 50, and I do not support LB 175. As Senator Albrecht said when it first came up, some of us were rather busy with other issues, and we wanted to see which direction it went on the first round. I first became concerned about the direction of Papio and its management and its disregard for taxpayers' wishes, and strained from the mission of what an NRD is supposed to do. When I heard rumblings about economic development projects where a developer was a wink and a nod was already picked ahead of time, and they knew about buying the land around the proposed dams, and the taxpayers were funding a developer's cost. There's no reason a developer can't go to the NRD and say, I'd like to build a dam here with your help, because we develop it, but the taxpayers shouldn't be building it unless it was needed for flood control. And the last 100-year deluge we got, flood, it's proven that the NRDs in the past did an adequate job on flood control, and nothing flooded in that area due to what they're, besides what they should have built levees, had the levees done around off it, but I guess building levees and dams for economic development was a more important need. But the people of that area just recently defeated a bond election, and then it troubled me when I seen the manager of the NRD here a couple weeks ago calling people out and asking them and telling them stories about floods and scaring them, and why was he here when his people already told him they did not want a tax increase? They did not want bonds issued. Why was he here? Why was this brought? The numbers are shocking when you look at it. The Papio NRD is no bigger in landmass than most of the other NRDs. Remember, their purpose is land, not population. So don't confuse how much population is in their NRD about what their mission is to do the natural resources of that area. They bring in $24.8 million with their levy. The closest one to them is the lower loop at $4.9 million. That's a 500% increase in revenues for no more creeks or landmass or terraces. And understand their terrace budget is for the ag is about $600,000 out of that. The lowest, the lower Niobrara, is $445,000. That's 5,400% more what the Papio NRD brings in tax dollars, and they want more. And they want more. There are already $60 million in debt building development, economic development projects around man-made lakes, helping. This is not needed. They're going to put the people of that district and that area in deeper debt, and they're going to put them in debt. My NRD's in debt too, but it was an emergency with saving irrigated farm ground in western Nebraska, and we had to bail out the state with the Republican River Basin and the Platte River Compact. But that's another story and another bill that I'm trying to address some of that. This is a slap in the face of taxpayers, folks. They spend let's just call it $25 million on trails, economic development, helping developers make huge profits with your tax dollars. There's no flood threat. They ignore the agriculture in their district and spend their money on trails. They have more personnel
more pickups, more office help, and they manage no more land than any of the other NRDs that are fiscally responsible. This is the wrong message to send the property taxpayers across the state that we go along with these kind of mismanagement of an NRD. Just total no respect for tax dollars. This bill needs to die, and a message needs to be sent. If the people tell you no in an election, as Senator Lowe said, this is the same thing that Senator Lowe was talking about on the Gage County, but that was emergency, just like my N-Corp was an emergency.
It's time, Senator.
There's no emergency here.
Thanks, Senator Gorney. Senator Albright.
Thank you, President Foley. Again, I want to pick up on where I left off on the Newport Landing in Bennington. On the Realtor's website, it describes it like this. Newport Landing is a relaxing lake community located northwest of Omaha near Bennington at 168th and Highway 36. The lake itself is about 280 acres, and the development consists of 84 acres around the lake. While the Papio, Missouri NRD used taxpayer dollars to build the reservoir for flood control, the Papillion Creek does not directly feed the lake. Water is actually pumped into the reservoir to maintain the appropriate water level for the Newport Landing homeowners' recreation. Public access to this 280-acre lake is single, very small concrete pad on the farthest north part of the housing development. The public cannot drop a boat in this lake. They can only fish from the concrete pad because the seawall surrounding the lake directly abuts to the homeowners' backyards. Now, I understand there is a trail system that was built on this property, and the public is restricted from access. This amendment simply adds language so that the amenities bought and paid for by the public shall be easily accessible to the public. Those are a lot of tax dollars that went into one particular area that we all can't access. Again, I want to stress the importance of why the NRDs were brought excuse me, to the state of Nebraska: for erosion prevention and control, prevention of damages from floodwater and sediment, flood prevention and control, soil conservation, water supply for any beneficial uses, development, management, and utilization and conservation of groundwater and surface water, pollution control, solid waste disposal and sanitary drainage, drainage improvement and channel rectification, development and management of fish and wildlife habitat, development and management of recreational and park facilities, forestry and range management. You know, maybe they have added economic development and creating lakeside properties. I don't know if that's in their statutory authority. My bigger concern right now is, you know, again, I've talked to you about these NRDs in my districts and how uncomfortable people are not attending their meetings to know what they are doing. And again, if the people don't know what these projects are all about, and maybe there's a newsletter, maybe they have a website that they can let the public know how they're spending their money, and the public can come to their meetings and discuss whether this is something that they would like to see them do or not like to see them do. But this is a lot of public dollars going into to different projects that I don't know that the whole, I mean, people are actually on these boards are voted in by the people to represent the people. And I would hope that they don't just get a majority group and off they go to the races. These things need to be public. The public needs to understand what they're doing. There needs to be an agenda so people know that there's a meeting and what they're going to be talking about. But it obviously seems to me that this bill, I want to know, I need to know, and I want to find out, was this on their agenda to bring to us? Was this on the Papio, Missouri Natural Resource agenda that they've voted to go to Lincoln and ask for extra time for bonding? I want to know that. And, you know, maybe there's somebody out behind the glass that will let me know if they did or didn't vote on this. You know, when a situation like this comes before us, we get to hear all of a sudden the emails start coming in, whether they're doing something good or they're not following order of business. But when things are brought to our attention, we do have to take a step back and slow the process down a little bit and start talking about these things and validating the concerns that people have. And I have been getting some information
That's
from...
time, Senator.
Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Albright. Senator Urban, you're recognized. It's your third opportunity. Is Senator Urban on the floor?
Yes. Am I up?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
This is your third opportunity, Senator.
All right, thank you. Let me, I alluded to these emails, and I want to address that now. As I share this information with you, if this doesn't bother you, if you don't get upset, if you're not concerned about how this NRD is managed, then we got greater problems than this NRD. This email comes from a director. His name is Mark Gruweld. I hope I pronounced his name right. The email is from the manager, John Winkler. It is in regard to the fact that some directors were left out of the announcement of the declaration of disaster. Mr. Winkler writes, "I apologize to any director not contacted. The first 6 directors I contacted gave approval to the issue of the declaration. They were contacted in no particular order. It has been quite hectic, as you can imagine. I will gladly contact each of the other directors to consult with each of you. Thank you, John Winkler." Danny Begley, director. He writes, "I'm always available to be contacted, especially in light of what has happened this past week. I know I'm new, but I'm not happy at all about being left out of the loop. The articles and the info are appreciated, but not being included in this puts me at a loss for words, and I'm deeply disappointed at being excluded. I am a director who has constituents equally as everyone and should be treated the same, treated as such." Danny. Another director, okay? "I'm extremely troubled that a director of the subdistrict of one of the Papio, Missouri River Natural Resource District was not contacted during the recent emergency declaration. He states the district policy, 14.4. It states the following, quote, and after consultation with all," and the emphasis was his in capital letters, "all available directors and the concurrence of 6 directors, that is the policy. I am and have been available at any time for a phone call, emails, text, or face-to-face meeting. Respectfully, Todd Japp." Okay, so here's what happens. The manager's in charge. The manager does whatever the manager wants to do with the approval of the board chairman. So they continue to do what they've always done, and no one's ever held them accountable. Well, maybe today it's going to be different. So let's talk about property tax and in those districts that this NRD represents. The information that I have, the average home in Nebraska, the property tax is $2,279. Nebraska is the 7th highest country, is 7th highest in the country in property tax, in all taxes collected, and 5th highest in property tax. Only New Jersey, Illinois, New York, New Hampshire, and Wisconsin and Texas have higher property tax.
1 minute.
The difference between Nebraska's average effective rate of property tax of 1.88 and the effective rate of other states is often significant. 24 states are lower than us. So here is what the property tax rate is in the counties that the NRD encompasses. Sarpy County, 2.12%, highest in the state. Sarpy County, highest in the state, 2.12. Omaha, 2.10, 10th highest in the country. Douglas County, 2.07, second highest in the state. Washington County is right on the average of 1.83. So what are we going to do? What happens to this NRD if we sunset this bonding authority? Well, currently, with the current valuation they have, if they raise their mill levy from the 3.7594 to the 4.5 cents, they raise another $4.9 million.
That's time, Senator.
Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Rubin. Before proceeding, Senator Linehan announces some guests visiting today, one guest actually. It's Mr. Patrick Slattery of Scott Catholic High Schools. Patrick is part of a senior project is job shadowing Senator Linehan today. Welcome, Patrick Slattery, under the south balcony. Continuing discussion on FA 50, Senator Slama.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to yield my time to Senator Albright if she'd like it.
Senator Albright, 5 minutes.
Thank you, President Foley, and thank you, Senator Slama, for the time. You know, I hate to just go negative, so I'm gonna sing some praises of the Papillion, Missouri River Natural Resource District. To their credit, they have built a wide network of reservoirs and parks in areas of Douglas and Sarpy counties, and even in my area of Dakota County. Even though the historic events of March 19th and 20th did not result in the flood of the Papio Basin. The reservoirs which helped that were the Glen Cunningham Reservoir, built in 1977, 1,050 acres of parkland and 390 acres of surface area. They also have Standing Bear Reservoir in 1977, 400 acres of parkland, 135-acre reservoir with fishing, boating, and 3.5 miles of trail surrounded by various housing developments. The Wearspan Reservoir in 1988, 1,200 acres, 246 of Lakeside, Chalco Reservation or Chalco Hills Recreation Area, 245-acre lake, 7 miles of trail, baseball, soccer, and 7 picnic areas, all for the public to enjoy. Zorinsky Lake Reservoir in 1993, 770 acres or 255-acre lake, 7 miles of trails, boating, fishing, baseball fields, drained in 2010 and 11 for zebra mussels. Prairie Queen Reservoir in 2015 in Sarpy County, they had 235 acres, 135-acre lake, 4 miles of trails, boating, and picnic areas. And then, of course, the Newport Landing, which we've already talked about, 640 acres and 280-acre lake. Youngman Lake in 2011 on 192nd and Dodge, 175 acres, 60-acre lake, which provides 0.52% of flood control. In 2004, the public-private partnership agreement between the Papio, Missouri River NRD and Dial Realty Development Corporation enabled Dial to construct the reservoir. Dial was the general contractor. The Papio NRD reimbursed Dial for the projects. If the project cost exceeded 1.390, $1,390,000, then Dial was reimbursed 100% for anything over the base cost. If the project cost was less than 1.390, Dial was reimbursed for their cost plus 20% of the difference. The agreement said that Dial and the SID that was to be formed would each be responsible to reimburse the NRD, Papillion, Missouri River NRD, $1 million on or before December 15th, 2005. If not, interest would be paid at 9.25%. The SID did not form. The obligation with the Papillion Missouri River NRD reverted back to Dial. $1 million was not paid by Dial in December of 2005 or ever. 11 months later, a new interlocal agreement was executed by a newly formed SID number 521. SID 521 paid a principal to the NRD of $1 million. SID 521 paid an interest to the NRD of $35,000. Total paid to the NRD $1,035,000. Interest should have been paid at 9.25% or $85,000. Net to the property taxpayers was $50,000. In a new agreement, Dial purchased 4 acres of the lakefront property from the Papillion Missouri River NRD for $604,000. The deal was $24,000 payable at closing, $580,000 due 5 years from closing, and 7.5% interest on a $120,000 note, and no interest on the $460,000 of a note. Dial defaulted on the note. Papio NRD accepted the deed to 9 lots in exchange for paying. The Dial note owed to the NRD was $580,000, unpaid interest, $39,145, special assessments on
Senator.
Lots. 1 minute.
That's time.
That's time. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Albright. Senator Lowe.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to yield my time to Senator Albright.
Thanks, Senator Lowe. Senator Albright, 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Senator Lowe, for allowing me to continue. So again, the special assessments on those lots were $590,000. Total paid to the Papio NRD for 9 lots, $878,145. The NRD then sold those 9 lots for $460,000. Total loss for the taxpayers, $418,145. Then we move on in 2019 to the Flanagan Reservoir. $44 million spent, 730 acres, 220-acre lake, parkland, fishing, canoeing, and walking trails. Then we move to Shadow Lake. I happened to be in Sarpy County at that time. Beautiful lake. In Papillion, the lakes are connected. Shadow Lake is a 30-acre lake. Midland Lake, 34 acres with fishing and boating. Candlewood Lake at 120th and Miracle Hills Drive, private. Weeby Reservoir adjacent to the Zarinsky Reservoir. The Walnut Creek Lake in Papillion, 450 acres, 100-acre lake. WP-6 in Papillion, $8 million, 69 acres, 34-acre lake. They spent $8 million on 69 acres and 34-acre lake. West side of 114th and Cornhusker Road. WP-1 Regional Detention Structure, an $11 million reservoir. Northwest Omaha, 180th and 4th Street. In 2018, $4.7 million, the Nebraska Natural Resource Commission. 2018, $4.5 million, Natural Resource Conservation Service. Majority of landowners surrounding structures are developers. This illustrates other funding sources rather than the property taxes. The dam site in Papillion, $5.2 million, 32 acres, 13-acre lake, east side of 108th and Cornhusker. Additional reservoirs are planned. Maybe this is part of the 8 projects that are still in the works. Let's see, so 6 surrounding high-end houses. So there are additional reservoirs planned, 6 surrounded by high-end houses. So again, I stand here today with grave concerns whether we need to allow this authority to go forward. I'd like again to know if the directors directed their general manager from the Papio, Missouri NRD to actually request from our legislature this authority to go forward for 5 years. Again, they originally asked for 10, going to 5. We really truly have a duty to our citizens to let them know how their money is being spent. We don't need to be the big brother to anybody, but if the Papio Creek, which did not flood during this last horrific flood event for the state of Nebraska, mind you, yes, Offutt Air Force did, but that was on the Missouri, which they didn't have any control over. But I do believe they have served their purpose when it comes to taking care of the city of Papillion and some of their other areas that they have built some of these reservoirs. But I just don't believe that I can stand here in good faith and say yes to 177 with the concerns of the actual folks that are voted in by this NRD. I do believe everybody deserves the same respect from one another to be able to know what their committees that they serve on are doing and have a say in whether or not something should go forward, because they too have to answer to their constituents that voted them in. So with this, I'll yield the rest of my time back to you.
Thanks, Senator Albright.
Thanks.
Items of record, please.
Mr. President, I do have items. Your Committee on Urban Affairs reports LB 492 and 564 to general file with amendments. Bills read on final reading this morning were presented to the Governor at 11 a.m. The constitutional amendment was presented to the Secretary of State at 11 a.m. Amendments to be printed: Senator Bostman 698, Senator Kalowski to 670, Senator Breesy to 177, Senator Wayne to LB 86. No ads. Mr. President, I have a priority motion. Senator Crawford would move to adjourn the body until Tuesday, April 23 at 9 o'clock a.m.
Members, you heard the motion to adjourn for the weekend. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. We are adjourned.